Hello, everybody. Welcome back. And I'm hoping that we have sound. Do we have sound, everyone? Okay, I'm going to wait for people to come back in because I was on a few minutes earlier and there was no sound. So that wasn't, hello, everybody. There we go. Okay, so now I see we have sound, which is good. Okay. So anyways, I'm going to just do a few things here. I'm going to go to our YouTube studio and delete the first one, if you don't mind. And so that people don't sit there and wait and just see me talking without sound. But anyways, what else is new, right? It's been a while since I've been online live. And it was because we needed to give you some information in regards to what's happening, where we're headed, and so that you'll be able to bear with us in the meantime. So I'm just going to go here to content, and hopefully other people will be joining us. Okay, nobody knows this was a surprise. Okay, so here we go live. We have the one now. So I'm going to go and delete this one, if they allow me. I've been getting so many, there we go, delete, yes. So many restrictions on everything that I do. I can't even get into my Facebook account right now. I have to use Dennis's when I go on there. Okay, so I should be fine here. And we're going to go back to this and make sure that I'm okay. So I'm going to hear sound in the background, I hope. Okay. And I think there we go. Yeah. Okay, good. Oh, thank goodness for that. So anyways, there's a lot of things. Hello, Linda, and hello, Nancy. Thank you again for letting me know there was no sound. I mean, that's usually my story anyway. I forget to check the buttons here on the Zoom. So anyways, I wanted to be able to come on Zoom or do a live stream to let people know that, yes, we're still alive. We're still working hard. There's going to be new developments, especially for September. But right now we're working on a three-part website. We're going to have our website, and we're going to have a members section, paid members section for the CPU members. And then we're going to have a section for businesses. And that's going to be very exciting. But when we sat down and looked at everything the last 3 years, we were so hopeful that the letter that we wrote to the UK and the loophole that we found out that, yes, our constitution is very much sitting in the UK to this day, because Canada did not fulfill its agreements within the conditions of the constitution coming back to Canada. Well, it came back to Canada, but a lot of things developed since then. And so we decided, okay, well, a lot of the Canadian lawyers and the constitutional lawyers were saying, no, the constitution belongs to Canada, blah, blah, blah. And then we thought, okay, well, they're not listening to us. We're going to go and look at the UK lawyers because we need to do it in the UK. So we get to the UK lawyers and we spent thousands of dollars, okay, on legal fees to get an opinion that, well, you're just going to get ignored. And it was like, okay, you might be right, but you're going to get ignored. So what do you do with that, right? So, okay, well, let's see if we can get an injunction in and try to force the issue and, bring back the fact that, yes, Canada had stipulations, and the stipulations were that the Indigenous nations had to be within 3 years. Canada had 3 years to sit down with the Indigenous nations and come to some agreement. And then, but then again, they were given up to 15 years to finalize everything, because within that 15 years was referendums for the Canadian people, because every single Canadian, okay, 1982, what Trudeau was doing was formally decolonizing us. Okay, what we call decolonization from the UK, truly becoming independent. Because in the UK, when you say the word independent, an independent country, doesn't mean that the country's independent, because their how can I say their definition from the government is that independence does not mean freedom. Doesn't, well, the word they use was liberty. So independence does not mean liberty. And it's only about the country being able to sustain itself, and the people to govern themselves accordingly, and with the UK still in the background. So when we started looking at all of these things, I think, oh my God, how come our constitution is still sitting in the UK legislature? Well, we started looking at the law. Okay, so anyways, just to say that before I go on, I have to put in this disclaimer, and I keep forgetting this, but we are practicing right now, the Canadian People's Union. Every time we open our mouths or say something or write something or promote something, we are actually activating our civil and political rights. And those are our fundamental rights under the universal human rights that we have, and that every person in the world has. So under the universal human rights, we have the right to our civil and political rights, and that also includes our collective rights. So Canada gave us, in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, personal rights. And within the human rights, the international human rights, we also have personal rights, but we also have collective rights. So now in Canada, 1982, to make a long story short, 1960, we were given the right to self-determination worldwide. All the countries agreed to all of these rights. That started off in 1945 after World War II in the creation of the United Nations. And then they all agreed, all the countries agreed that all the peoples were now going to be liberated and free worldwide. So again, we were supposed to be liberated. So from 1960 to Canada had, well, all the countries had from 1960 on until they signed the official agreements with the United Nations to start setting up laws to accommodate our universal human rights. So in 1982, Pierre Elliott Trudeau was actually in 1968 knew about our rights to collective self-determination with the Indigenous nations and to decolonize from the UK crown. So what he did is he created, okay, well, let's create the charter now. So they created the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to give us some rights to conform with the universal human rights. However, the most important ones, they left out. And then he declared in private in letters to the UK that he was threatening decolonization, and that he wanted the UK to agree to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms as our constitution. Then the UK came back and said, that's not how it's done. So we're going to add the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to the BNA Act, which is the Canadian Constitution from the UK. So, and what the UK did was actually also change the name to the Canada Act, 1867 and 1982. So now they had to remove the BNA Act in our Constitution. So if you read our Constitution, you're going to see a lot of repeals for the BNA Act. Why? Because the BNA Act name was being changed to the Canada Act 1982. So if you hear otherwise, go and read the Constitution of Canada, 1867 to 1982, and you have two parts, which was the BNA Act, and then now transferred to the Canada Act 1867. And when you see repeal, they repeal the name in those sentences. And that's how you read our Constitution. And if you're not sure, then you go down to the notes and you can read the notes at the end of the Constitution. Those are very important because they explain why they were replacing certain words and, or changing a different section. However, because all of this was done, a lot of people are making wrong assumptions. Okay, we do have a Canadian Constitution, but it still has the UK on it, and it has the UK on it in the preamble when you first start reading it. That should give you enough clues. So then you go to the UK legislature, okay, the UK website, and then you look at the Canada Act 1982, and you'll be able to see that the changes were made, and that it still sits in their it's still part of their legislature. So that was never repealed. And as long as it sits in their legislature, according to English law and constitutional law, they still hold the right of changing the primary legislation within that constitution. So it's really interesting. I mean, we've learned so much, it's not even funny. But primary legislation comes from the parliaments. Okay, so in the UK, it was the parliament, not the UK prime minister and the ministers that changed our constitution. It had to be all of the parliamentarians, and then they would tell the Queen to give royal assent. So the Queen, her power is nothing. Okay, she has zero power in our constitutions other than formalizing royal assent. Okay, and that's what our governor generals do here when they represent the Queen, because she's not here, and they give royal assent. So royal assent is an order by the prime minister or the ministers and parliament to give feasibility to a law, to make, once we got royal assent, then it's a go. Okay, so excuse me, that becomes a statute. Okay, it has to create, primary legislation has to create a statute, and then you got to have the regulations written for it, which is the act itself. So again, we had to learn the difference between all of these things. And in the UK legislature, then we found out, okay, well, if our constitution is still in their legislature, we never got separated. We were never free in 1982. And even Trudeau's lawyer in 1982 said that we were still very much a colony, a whole colony. Okay, not different provinces and different colonies. The whole country was a colony of the UK still. And we are still to this day in 2023. And this is how we thought, okay, now bingo, we've got it. They have to give us our right to self-determination, collective self-determination, decolonization since 1960, and it hasn't been done properly. The UK had no problem in giving it to us, but the Canadian government did not want the Indigenous nations or the people know that now we would be in charge. So all they did in 1982 was switch one dictatorship, make it look like one dictatorship to another. Okay. So what happened is the prime minister's office, Pierre-Luc Trudeau, and his ministers, they ended up getting what you call the royal prerogative, but really the royal prerogative belongs to all of Parliament, okay, in the legislatures. So the under the federal government, not the provincial ones. So in 1931, if we go back to 1931, the provinces all lost their rights, their individual rights, really, in a sense. They all came together under the federal government. 1931, that's what happened. So coming back to 1982, if somebody tells you that, oh, well, there's section 59 there, okay? So section 59 says, but Quebec has to agree, the province of Quebec has to agree to the Constitution, and Quebec didn't. However, there was a court case. If you read that, you have to go and read the Hansard in the UK everything that was discussed in Parliament. And then you have to read the Kershaw report. There's 3 sections to the Kershaw report, 3. Okay. So anyways, it's really, really interesting to see what was being said. And then one of the gentlemen, one of the men that worked in the Kershaw report to see what the UK really legally had to do, and to see if they could actually do what Canada was demanding. Once you read that, then you really start to see what was being said in the UK, how the UK was pissed off at Trudeau, and they could see how we were being ripped off. So what they did is they came back and they put in the stipulations that all of the Canadian citizens had to vote. So what did the Canadian government do? We had the Charlottetown Accord and we had the Meech Lake Accord. Both failed. However, one of them, the premiers all met behind closed door with the minister, and then they made some agreements and then tried to pass that off. So again, this is why our constitution still sits in the legislature of the UK, because technically we are still a colony of the UK. So a lot of the lawyers don't want to believe this. The Canadian lawyers don't want to believe it. The UK lawyers said, hey, we got to fight at the international level. So, okay, so we got our instructions on what to do to prepare this so that we can give them the information and start fighting at the international level. So here we are. We had to go back and really read a lot of the stuff within all the countries and what transpired at the international level, what the judges said, the Supreme Courts and everywhere else, and even how English law came about. So we had to learn the history. We had to learn everything. We had to go and we have to look at how many times Canada overreached their powers against the people, and especially the Indigenous nations. So we have to go and look at court documents after court document after court document, and then read the discussions. Because when you go to CanLIL, you'll only get about 50 pages. Well, the court case is about 500, 200 to 500 pages. And some a little bit less than that. It all depends on how much information they put in. But when they finally go to the Supreme Court or there's a final judgment, then those are the ones that we actually look to see what was the debate. So many judges, like if you look at the Supreme Court, you'll have 5 judges that said yes, 4 judges said no. Then you got to go and read the debates and try to make sense of it. And then they have assumptions. But really by law, they're supposed to go back to the day that they were in Parliament, that when they created this law. What was the debate about? What was the real reason behind creating this law? So the judges are normally should go back and read all of these Hansard documents from the government to see in what context this law is supposed to be done in, and what does it really provide, and what's it really for. So we've noticed that a lot of that's not even being done. There's all kinds of assumptions. It's a mess since the get-go. 1982. Okay, we'll come back to 1982, and I know I'm probably confusing a lot of you. And but the thing is in 1982, the government said, well, Canada doesn't need to accept, Canada signed on to our civil and political rights in they agreed to them in 1960. Then they agreed to our civil and political rights in 1966. Then there was 10 years that they need to prepare for this and make sure that those laws were going to be almost identical to the ones, that they agreed to. They didn't have to use the exact same words, but they had to have the same outcome. So anyways, to go back to our civil and political rights, which gives us our total power, collective power over the government, that's the one they neglected to put into the charter in 1982. And then they added under section 52, and you got to read this real fast. And there's a huge deception around section 52 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, because they use the words international instruments. And if there's something that Canada signed on to, they are bound by it. So because of this, we had to go and see to find as many items as possible that Canada neglected their duties. Okay, at the from the international level. So we found very interesting information in regards to the notwithstanding clause at the federal level, and then how it's being used at the provincial level. So, to make a long story short, there's a lot of assumptions out there, even by the judges, the lawyers, if they're not up on the information. And there was one lawyer that made a Canadian lawyer, thank goodness for him. I'm not going to say his name right now, but anyways, he made a point of stating that, the history of the rule of law and all this needs to be brought back. And because of that, a lot of the lawyers in Canada, even the judges because they're just lawyers who become judges, some of them might not even have learned anything about this, and they might not even bother. So now we've got where we're dealing with a legal system that is void of critical information that would guarantee us our rights. So now you've got a lot of court cases coming out where the justices are giving wrong information, are making bad judgments. Are they all wrong? They were told that in 1982 on the Supreme Court of Canada wrote that if Canada had not created the laws for it yet, Canada didn't have to abide by those rules. Okay. So if there was a law at the international level that Canada was supposed to create and had 10 years to create it in, well, if they hadn't created it within the 10 years, they weren't penalized because they had 10 years to create it. But after the 10 years come up, then they get penalized at the international level. So when Canada signs on to an international document, okay, what they call in Section 52, which international instruments, they are bound by those laws at the international level. So, but Canada wrote that, well, if Canada hasn't made a law for it yet, it doesn't count. So all the lawyers out there that I've seen so far repeat the same thing. Well, if Canada hasn't created a law for it, it doesn't matter if that's a law at the international level. That is wrong. And this is why we've kept away for a little while, because we were so busy. And then we were justified in everything we were saying. And these lawyers are wrong. Some of them are even teach law. Canada had from 1966 to 1976, the minute that Canada and the UK signed on to those international instruments, we were guaranteed our rights. However, now they're trying to take that away from people worldwide. And that's why our solution, we figured, okay, well, the law's the law, and it's, things are going to change, and the judges have to abide by the law and the rule of law. And we've got precedents after precedent. We should be able to go in and hands down get a judge to give us an injunction to force the UK into giving us our rights. That didn't happen. What was the reason? Lawyers who were not prepared in that type of battle. They have no clue in regards to decolonization and for Canada, here in Canada. And then in the UK, they're more familiar with it, but at the same time, they don't know what happened in Canada. Looks good, Canada's supposed to be an independent country. Well, again, read the fine print. Independence, as far as the UK is concerned, the UK Parliament, independence does not mean liberty. And they said that at the international courts. Okay. So we had to go and read and read and read, and we're still reading. We're still trying to organize. So we figured, okay, well, the law is not being followed. If we don't have the law on our side and the lawyers on our side, practicing the real law, and making sure the rule of law is inserted in everything that they do, we're not going to get anywhere. So I thought, okay, let's hang back here. Let's see exactly what's wrong with this picture. First, we have to speak to the lawyers. We have to convince them. So far, I have not been able to, at least not here. So we started looking, you know, in the UK. We went to the UK, spent thousands of dollars in the UK to be told, well, the UK, you know, is just going to ignore you. Well, if the people, and my debate was, well, if the people rise, they won't be able to ignore us, because the UK is in breach, and UK and both Canada are both in breach and guilty of fraud against the Indigenous nations of Canada and the Canadian citizens. It's in black and white. It's also in the UK legislation in regards to the rule of law, in regards to our principles, in regards to the reasons why such laws were created and we had precedents for. So what, we're just going to roll over and do nothing just because, oh, well, they're just going to ignore you? Yeah, the UK has ignored countries who had tried to decolonize and get their rights. Mauritius is one of them, for the Chagos Islands. And the thing is the beauty of it is, you know, timing is wonderful, okay? Since the 1960s, Mauritius, well, 1968, Mauritius started fighting for their decolonization rights. They decolonized in 1968. Right up till January of last year, the UK refused, or I mean this year even, the UK was refusing to hand over the islands because of Garcia. They have a military base along with the United States, and they share that island. It's a military base, and they kicked everybody off the island, and then they took that over, and then they did not want to give that back to Mauritius. Well, the thing is they finally had to concede. Why? Because there was a vote in Parliament, not Parliament, at the UN. 111 countries voted against the UK and the United States in keeping Garcia. Okay, it had to revert back to Mauritius, and it did. So now what's happening? Do they have to remove the military base? No. What's happening now is, now Mauritius is collecting rent. Okay, and that's what's happening there. So anyways, that was a precedent that fell into our laps. And then the lawyers who worked on that, that's who we finally reached again in the UK, same place as you know, human rights lawyers. And they're fantastic, by the way. But the thing is they didn't know anything about Canada. So we had to go back, and even the documents we had did not give them a big enough picture of what to do at the international level, because of what was happening with the other decolonization measures that other countries tried. Well, the people in other countries tried to do, but at the same time, governments came in, just like Canada, and stole the people's rights from under them. So most of the countries who did decolonize ended up with the same kind of dictatorship that we did. So now it was governments taking over the rights of the people. And it's like, well, now we'll do all the work, but you just need to vote, you know, and we're supposed to do what you want because we work for the people. Well, now they work for political parties. So they have to maintain their political party status, and they have to vote according to what the political party wants, not the people, the political party. So anyways, we're going to be, because of all of these issues that we've seen, we finally have lawyers who, yes, totally agree with us, but they are familiar with international law. So it was like, okay, now let's see what we can do with this. So because of these things, now we have to, again, keep building and then organize things that we need to do at the international level, because it's only the international level really that's going to get us out of this. But we're going to need other countries to come along with us. So how can I say, it's not that it's not doable, it's very doable if the people stand with us. And then at the same time, we can argue the right. A lot of the court cases that we've seen, when we read them, they're lost. They've lost cases because something was not used in there. We're not lawyers, okay? And we need the lawyers to start noticing these things, because if they had other information, they'd be able to win their cases a lot more. And that's because the Canadian government has made sure that the bar has kept information from them, and even the Supreme Court judges, to not include certain aspects into the law. Okay. Now the International Bar Association is starting to say, hey, something's very wrong here. It's like all these countries are trying to subvert the rule of law. And yes, that's true. So now there's people, judges, and people in law at the international level really waking up to this. And that's a bonus for us, because finally we have people who are listening. Finally, we have people who understand what we're talking about. But the thing is again, who's going to be the country to do it? And this is where the beauty of it is, that I have no regrets over taking 14 years out of my life, and Dennis's life, and even our son's life, because we weren't with him while we were doing this, and to me that was huge. But in order to be able to understand what's coming in the near future, we're almost out of time. And I've been saying we're out of time since 2017, because I could see every aspect. I just had no clue that they were going to use a pandemic to get everything done. But as long as they keep popping things into our faces and keeping us busy arguing over these issues, we're not seeing what's coming down the pike. I mean, we've been screaming since 2008 about the mayors running the world. And that's how they destroy all of our constitutions, all of our provinces, all of our countries, to be ruled at the international level under a world government. Finally, we can see how they're manipulating everything. Last week, Ontario, Doug Ford finally gave the right of the mayors to override decisions made by the councillors. They are taking away the people's right to vote, right to elect people to speak for them, if they really speak for them, and allowing a mayor to make crucial decisions. And they're saying, well, this was just a trial. So Ontario gave the rights to two mayors, one in Ottawa, the one in Ottawa, and the one in Toronto. But then that didn't last long, because the mayor had to, he was doing things that were not kosher, let's say, and had to remove himself. So now there's an election in Toronto. Well, we already know, I mean, from what we've read, I've yet to see somebody get elected that wasn't already approved by the powers that be that want to control us. Why? Because we've had many letters sent to us from people working in counting the ballots, telling us that, hey, something weird's going on. They stopped the count before we were even halfway done and declared a winner. However, these people are terrified. They will not sign an affidavit. No proof, no written proof, no witnesses. The government keeps doing what it wants. So it's up to us to be able to really look at what's going on, really strategize. And this is what we've been doing. And we're going to be doing this for the next 3 months, June, July, and August, so that we're ready in September with a new website, a website that they're not going to be able to bar us from. And if they try, it'll come up in different areas. So it's taken a long time to be able to find the right programs and to be able to make sure that because pretty soon, because of Bill C-11, they will bar everybody from getting the right information. So we need to organize now before we lose everybody. Or access to everyone or to the right information. If you've noticed, a lot of websites have disappeared. They won't allow us to be able to send emails unless we've registered under a certain organization. And these things cost a huge amount of money. If we discuss something, let's say that's medical, well, we have to be part of HIPAA. So, we have to pay for that as well. So there's a lot of things that we have to organize to make sure that our website stays alive as long as it can. And if they take our website down, like they did our Facebook page, and even now our second page, the PowerShift, because we had the Canadian People's Union, the CPU Facebook page, they barred us from that. They keep barring me every time I try to post anything on Facebook. I get blocked because we are political. Okay. So because of that, it makes it hard to reach everybody. And even YouTube, every time I make a video, they'll ban me for so many days. I can't make another video. So I figured, okay, well, we're going to let sleeping dogs lie, let them sleep for a while, try to back off here and do our work, make sure that we have tons of information, tons of proof, the right one. And what we've landed on was just amazing. Please learn those. So we're going to be coming back with information on what we've noticed in the law. And so that people can understand that you need to, yes, find out what the law is, what is the rule of law. So it's basically going to be some educating the people. And hopefully at the same time, the lawyers will start listening instead of saying, no, you're wrong. Why don't you ask me? Why don't you say, show me the proof, Nicole? Because I had a constitutional lawyer, a teacher that teaches law say, oh, I was wrong. And I was in shock because he didn't even give me the chance of defending why I make these stipulations. He's not giving me a chance. Most of them didn't. How many of them? I mean, I thank goodness for Daniel. He always makes me laugh, right? And poor guy's been trying to, and he's been getting the door shut in his face because they think the bar gave them all the information. Well, if the bar was able to do what they did to the lawyers and to the doctors and the law, manipulate the law the way they did, what makes the law teachers, think that they weren't lied to, or the lawyers that they weren't lied to by the bar? So this is what we're going to be showing you in Canada's Dirty Little Secrets, and like I said, a lot of the lawyers don't even know. So that's why they argue with us, but they don't even give us a chance to explain or to show them the proof. So now we've got, how can I say, we finally have ears that are listening. And but we need to revamp our whole strategy in the sense, not the solution stays the same, but we need to make sure that the people understand our message loud and clear. We don't need to explain a whole bunch of stuff, because even if we go back to 1931 and how Canada was created and all of this stuff, it doesn't matter. 1960, every country after World War II, the peoples of every country were liberated, and it was up to us, all the peoples, because if you look at when Quebec wanted to separate, they could not separate, and they can still not separate, and they sure as hell are not sovereign any more than Alberta is, or even Alberta is not sovereign. So they can say whatever the hell they want, keep people arguing, but in the end, when Quebec tried to separate, international law states, and this is what the judges used. They used international law finally. They'll only use it when it suits them. And then they won't use it when the government can get penalized. But they use this in the 1980s, okay, 1985 to 1995, that big issue with Quebec wanting to separate. They couldn't, because the country belongs to every single Canadian and an Indigenous person in the country from A to Z. There's no such thing, really, or no provinces should have different laws. But they kept them like that to fool us. And it worked. But 1960, they all agreed that we have the right to collective self-determination, and that all of our natural resources come back to us, and none of the countries who were dealing with our natural resources or had them could say boo about it. It belongs to us, the people, from coast to coast to coast. The same thing with the UK belongs to the people, not the crown, not the queen, not the parliament, not the politicians, belongs to the people. But if the people do not rise and be on the same path as one voice, one, the solution, which is we want our rights recognized. And then what is supposed to happen is the courts fall below us to make sure that the parliamentarians, the government, when they create laws, then the justices are able to say, hey, that's unconstitutional. Why? Okay, so the judges are there to protect us from a government. The Syracuse Principles was created to be able to protect the people from governments who are trying to take over. It was all about dictatorship. So anyways, people, I could go on and on and on about this. I don't know how to start this video because it's been so long. And usually I don't like to make these live streams, it's like, but at the same time, once I get into it, I'm fine. And it's with your support that helps me want to make them to begin with. But, there's only so much that we can do in repeating ourselves. But this is huge. And why this is huge, the justices, okay, the judges are terrified, some of them. The lawyers are terrified. The doctors were terrified. In the last 3 years, they've been attacked, and, they've been threatened with their livelihoods, their jobs, their security, all of this. And it's only by the people standing behind them that will give them the incentive to say, yes, this is true. Yes, we're going to abide by the rule of law and the principles behind them, because they are there to protect us. But we have to make them work for us, not for the government, not for the dictatorship, not for the WEF, not for any corporation that's trying to maintain control. It belongs to we, the people, and it's up to us to take it back, along with the Indigenous nations as equals. It's the only way this is going to work, and it would be the ideal solution for every country worldwide, especially ones with Indigenous peoples in there. You're supposed to have dividends, not taxation. The government does not own you, you own them. But as long as we do nothing, they've got the power. And see what's going on right now. They're making their own laws. They are actually changing the definition of words. We need to bring that back. And everything that they did, okay, the laws, if there's something that contradicts the laws in Canada, okay, our rights contradict every law they've created since 1982. And possibly 1931. But we're not going to go that far, because it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. There's no laws, no nothing. The only thing we have to focus on is after World War II, everyone was liberated in 1960 and has the legal right to do it. And it doesn't matter how things happened before. We need to set things straight. We start from there. The people's rights. Okay. you focus on that, the people's rights. And we all have that right together, but we have to be together. So anyways, I've talked more than I was supposed to. And we'll be back. We're just finalizing the websites. So our website, the PowerShift.ca, will, when you go to the PowerShift.ca, you can still sign up on there now. But what our members are going to get is an email. You're going to receive an email with a certain link and a private link that you use, and it's only good once, so that you can go into the new website, to have access to it without having to repay, since you've already paid. The new members will have to go to the new website and then register from there. So this way, we're going to have everything in one area for our members, and we'll be able to zoom right in there. You'll be able to have discussions with other people in there. We'll be able to see where we are in our communities, trying to set up communities. But right now we have to go after the judges, in the sense that we have to get their attention and say, hey, you need to bring back the proper rule of law, the principles that they were created by and based on, as well as the Syracuse principles. Because if we do not get to convince them, if we do not have the law on our side, and some of them keep being corrupted, and we'll have proof of this, we'll be able to show you places where judges, let's say, here's an example, Supreme Court judges, okay, have said one thing and then turn around and said another thing. To manipulate, okay, and to keep people fighting and to make their points. And then you see the lawyers go, huh? What the hell just happened here? Okay. Very interesting videos on that. And, some of the justices need to leave their positions because they were not being honest, and they should recuse themselves. And they had some of the court cases, they had no business being on there making judgments. But anyways, hey, they want to sue me, they can go right ahead, but I'm activating my civil and political rights to be able to say what I want online and everywhere else, because it is my universal right under our political and our civil and political rights. Okay. So this is something that you all need to do because I'm allowed to speak to every other Canadian citizen and Indigenous person in Canada, and to start strategizing and talk about the law all we want. We're not practicing law. We're actually conversing. We're strategizing, and we have every right to do so. So I'm not a lawyer, but I wish the lawyers would get on the ball. Start listening to what we have to say, look at the facts, and then make their decision. That's what a good lawyer would do. Somebody that shuts us down, is living inside the box, manipulated, brainwashed, I don't know. But if they're not asking us to show us the proof, they are not doing their jobs. So anyways, please, bear with us again. You're not going to see us that much on having members meetings, where we've canceled all the members meetings for June, July, and August, so that we can work on all of this stuff that we're trying to piece together with videos, with proof, things being said in courts, and then the transcripts from the courts, plus the Hansards from the government. You have no idea how much this takes. No idea. But we're trying to get it done. And it's all about us being allowed to enforce our rights and force them to abide by the true rule of law and not rule by law, and the misconceptions they have built around that to confuse people, to use and abuse the Canadian citizens and the Indigenous nations and the people worldwide. We can stop this, but we need to take action, and we need to do it right. And we need to make sure that the politicians that do want to do right come and see us. So I'm going to leave you with that. The new website, right now, I'm not going to give you the address right away, but once it flips over, it should be any day now. We're just trying to do the finalization of the how can I say that, the back end in regards to now translation for the French people. So anyways, they should be able to read English and French together. But anyways, it's a 3-part thing. It takes a while. And because the government has been changing everything, and the WEF and corporations, it's really hard to even put programs together that actually work together. And now with Windows 11, it's hell. They want everything on the cloud. So now nothing's private. So we want to make sure that our members are protected, that the information is protected. We were going to be removing, people will no longer be able to make accounts just by going on the website. It'll have to be paid members only. And then businesses who want to protect, help their employees and get employees and protect the people from forced vaccinations or whatever, the ones who will honor the human rights of their employees will be able to list themselves with us, and hopefully they'll be able to also participate, because they will be losing their businesses. The way everything is going, nobody's going to be able to work anymore. And if you look at some of the grocery stores, they now came out with the smart carts. You've got a little screen and a little tablet to put your credit card in. What you put in, you scan everything, you put in your cart, and then you pay and you leave. There will be no more tellers. Okay. It's not just, going through the self-checkout. Now the carts are smart carts. So a lot of people will love that, but the reality is we're going to a cashless society. We will no longer be able to control anything we want to do. They will control us through the election of new mayors. So Ontario, be wise, 26 mayors will now be able to override all of the councillors. And do not stop at believing that, oh, it's only a trial, or they're only going to do this for housing. 2008, do your research. You will find how how the mayors will rule the world. And that came out with a Mr. Barber in 2008. And I've been freaking out since then. And that's why I'm with you today. And it's actually happening now. And it'll be like that worldwide. And that's why they're creating the 15-minute cities or 15-minute neighborhoods. And those fires happening, they're going to try and push everybody into cities because they want to know where everybody is. And then we're going to have to ask special permissions and see if we've got enough points to be able to walk out our own doors. So you might think that's a little extreme, but it isn't. They talked about this in 2008. So we'll leave you with that. Good night. And pour les gens français, je vais revenir demain avec ça, là. Mais ça va être de bonne heure le matin. Okay. So anyways, I will be back tomorrow morning in French, early, to be able to talk about this. And I know I've overtalked, but hey, we're back. We've never left. And now we're revamping our look and making sure that our message is very direct, very simple, no more confusion, and no more useless debates about this and that. We are focusing on our rights to self-determination, collective self-determination with every other Canadian Indigenous person, and we will not deviate from that. That solution is there for everybody. It needs to happen, and we don't have time wasting. We will not be wasting our time arguing with all kinds of things that are not relevant to our rights to self-determination since 1960. Anything before that doesn't matter. Okay, doesn't matter. So we will not be discussing those issues. So anyways, again, go to the powershift.ca. You can get your memberships there. And we'll transfer everybody over to the other website. Okay, so within the next, actually, you can go to the website now. We still have some things to do. We're still not quite done with the information. but you'll be able to go to the cpu.ca. That's going to be the new website, but the PowerShift.ca will revert you to that one. So if you want to wait a couple of days, you need your membership, you want to renew your membership, you'll be able to go there and sign up. And we use Stripe. It's not with PayPal. People left, they didn't leave, they left PayPal. So now they were worried about, how do they pay? Well, you can pay through Stripe. Okay, so Stripe, you don't need to set up an account or whatever. It's straight credit card, no ifs and buts about it. Or you can get a prepaid card if you want to make sure. But everything's being set up. Most of it is almost ready. But again, we want to focus on what's real, what's right, and what facts we can prove, especially with some of the information we're going to be releasing out to you in September. Some of it will be before, but the lump sum will be in September when the government comes back. Okay, so this way you'll have time to start researching, educating yourself on the rule of law, what creates a good law, things like that. And this is what we're going to be doing our live streams on, always based on law. Okay, and what we can do together, because although we are not we're not legal advisors, we're not lawyers. That's up to the lawyers to do that. If you need legal advice, you go to a lawyer, don't come to us. But with us, what we're doing is we're going to be discussing all the avenues that we can take legally, in the sense for our civil and political, under our civil and political rights, and we can speak about them online. We are protected by international law on that. And I don't care about being challenged on that fact, but bring it on. And this is how we stay alive, people. This is how we keep our country. This is how, by knowing what's real and what's not, and to make sure that the government knows that we know our rights, even though here they might not want us to practice our rights, there's other avenues, and that's where we're heading for. So eventually, hopefully the judges and the lawyers will see the light. The police officers will see the light. The military officers will see the light. And once we have all of them, and the medical professionals see the reality of things, we might have a very strong country that will have helped all the other countries to get their rights as well. So that's what we're working on. That's what we're focused on. And what we do is serious. We're not just any other gathering of people, or I have to say, we're not just another organization out there. We want the truth. We want to be able to fight with the truth, and the truth in the end will prevail. And as long as people learn the truth and learn the reality of what the law is, you'll be able to defend yourself as well, and your children will defend themselves. And that's the purpose behind the Canadian People's Union. That's for everybody to be educated, and for us to bring back the rule of law and the true principles as to why they're there. And first of all, just remember this: in Canada, we have a law. They're not allowed to change your DNA. Okay. And all of that can be taught to you, through the CPU. But at the same time, they are not supposed to change anybody's DNA, not even the animals, other than under research. Okay. So Canada is the only country that still has that. And if anything like that was ever done to any Canadian, other than through, the, how can I say, through medications or injections or whatever, they're not allowed to change that DNA. Okay. So keep that in mind. And because that's one law that if we were able to bring that forward, there'd be hell to pay. So now I guess Canada wants to change because, we need to give into science. Well, we don't need to give into science. And even though some of the things look beneficial, scientifically, and for people who are sick and all that, that's one issue. But regular people should not even be near those types of scientific methods. And this is where your education is going to be important, so that you can tell the difference between what's right and what's wrong, what's good for you and what's not good for you, whether you like, you know, the choice. The bottom line is every person has the right to say yes or no. And that's what we're fighting for. The right to say yes or no, and not to have things put in our faces and forced down our throats when the majority do not, you know, where it has nothing to do with majority, has nothing to do with our country, and has nothing to do with our provinces, and has nothing to do with our normal way of life. If somebody wants to be a certain way, that's up to them, but don't push it down people's throats. Don't make it a war about it. So now we need the people to focus not on what they've seen in the last 3 years, but on the picture that you want to see for Canada. A free country where we can focus on making dividends instead of taxation, making sure everybody's cared for, that nobody is ostracized, that everybody has the right to a decent life in this country, and we together can get it done. So again, the powershift.ca, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.